webcasting to the world.
Do you remember the moment that you saw yourself in God and God in you, and you were one with the universe and God and everybody?
Knowing the truth about the gospel.
You were one with the prostitutes and pimps and priests and kings, and there was nobody on earth that was better than you nor less than you.
That we are all righteous.
And no one on earth was any less in Christ than anyone else.
That's Mike Williams, and this is the Gospel Revolution.
Hello, this is Daniel Rouse. Would you welcome with me again the founder and president of the Gospel Revolution, Michael Lilborn Williams.
Hello, Daniel Thomas Rouse.
You know, I woke up this morning just in awe of everything we're learning and going through, and just thinking about where I came from. I'm jumping right into the show here today.
There we go.
It's amazing when I look back. You and I have had a conversation this morning about several different things, and I look back and I think about how much of my life has changed, and I didn't even know it was changing.
Wow. Tell us about that, Daniel.
Having one of the things that you and I talked about was having and holding two thoughts in the mind at the same time and still being at peace with it. Goodness, people just have a hard time doing that, you know, as you begin to research an idea, to think. Good God, just to be free to think, Michael.
Yeah.
Laying in bed this morning thinking and realizing that I can think two thoughts that are contrary, that one would think would be contrary to each other, and still be at peace in my mind about it. Mm-hmm. One of the things, Michael, that you have said throughout the history of the Gospel Revolution that really just sticks with me is in our thinking. Number one, it's okay to think thoughts. Thoughts are going to come, and the thoughts from all over the board.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And it's okay to have those thoughts, to think things through to the end. That was my saving grace out of Christianity was, okay, let's look at the doctrine of hell. Let's think about that and think about it all the way through. Let's get outside the rhythm of the dogma that we teach on Sunday morning, and let's think this all the way through. Let's think about believing in Christ. Let's think that through all the way through to the end. And then, Michael, perhaps the biggest one, and we want to deal with this one a little bit today even, is thinking against the status quo, the common thought. And I think anyone listening to this podcast, if you've listened to us for any period of time, you are one of those people. Because what we teach at the Gospel Revolution is not the status quo. What we teach at the Gospel Revolution is not the accepted truth in the world. Definitely not in Christianity. But being able to think those thoughts and think them through, and to think against that which is popular. And Michael, we're in that now as we're addressing physics. We are thinking thoughts against what is the common norm. We are abnormal, and we're comfortable with it.
Yeah, that was the thing interesting when my daughter was here a couple of weeks ago, and she now is part of the staff of the ministry, which I never dreamed of happening. Certainly wasn't a goal of mine nor hers, but this has just fallen into place in a beautiful way. As she was making comments about that very thing, Daniel, and just the ability to stop and think about something, and to hold those things in respect, not allowing your brain to freak out because you see something and you see something else and you're not yet sure about what that something else is, and to comfortably hold both. Don't hold any of them tightly, but hold them and hold them loosely. It's because if you're holding something too tightly, you can't visualize it or see it. But if you hold it loosely, you can examine it. And the other thing, you can examine it all at the same time. And by comparison, really make some wonderful observations. So the things that you've said, Daniel, are just they're treasured things. These are cherished process. And a lot of people do forget that this hasn't always been simple. Now we look at it and it's like the gospel is so simple. But see, I remember you guys asking me these questions back in the day. But what about him? But what about? Well, if everybody's right, see, we've always, the whole stance of the gospel revolution is to be thinkers.
Yeah.
The moment you become afraid to think about something, you're stepping outside of the mindset of a gospel revolutionary. We're not afraid to think about anything, and especially if it pertains to the gospel, as does physics. And we were not the ones to assign physics to the gospel. The book of Psalms assigns physics to the gospel. And Paul assigns physics to the gospel and the gospel to physics. He says one explains the other and the other explains the one. Now, until you're willing to hold those both at the same time, you'll never see those. But Psalms 19, and that's not complicated anymore. But we were able to see both the spiritual and the physics part of it playing out. So, yeah, we do hold the right to open ourselves to thought, and that those thoughts are not dangerous. And the fact that, I remember teaching the gospel of peace to people. I studied the gospel of peace for a better part of a decade before I ever opened my mouth to declare the gospel of peace. And even then I got, of course, pushed back. So you're just saying Hitler's saved. You're saying even Hitler's going to heaven. And so it hasn't always been. People forget the pushback their own brain gave. Nobody just heard this and said, this is, the gospel is so simple. Nobody has had that process. One of the most ardent GRs that I know of, as far as embracing the gospel is concerned, is Glenn Klein. And yet for years, at least 2 years, Glenn was stuck on the sovereignty issue. And so I let that all play out right on the air. And Glenn said, I disagree with Mike on this. That's no big deal. We forget the process. And then after about 2 years of allowing Glenn the space to embrace that concept without getting into conflict about it at any point, and there was never any conflict about it. And then all of a sudden, it was like, I get it. But what he did was he held both of his thoughts to where that he still believed in sovereignty. Now, in my mind, it's like, how in the world can you say you're free and believe in sovereignty at the same time? But that's how the process goes. Now that he and others are on the other side of that and many hundreds of other issues, we look back and say, the gospel was so simple. Why are we going into this complicated stuff? But the gospel was not always that simple, folks. We are graciously having a memory lapse as to what the process was actually like. We were attracted, but it did not, we had everybody. If you didn't question your way into this, you do not understand the gospel yet. You had to question everything we said.
Question everything.
And you questioned everything that I said. I remember your questions. I remember being questioned about it. But see, until you have aired all your questions, it's not truth to you. It's somebody else's truth that you're writing on.
Mm.
And you need it to be yours. That's why I'm not offended when people go out and repeat me word for word. That doesn't bother me. Now, it bothers me for them because they're being disingenuous by stating that the Lord showed me this and the Lord showed me that. Well, evidently I'm the Lord. So I didn't.
Yes, Lord.
I got another promotion, Daniel.
I'll add that to the intro.
Yeah.
Lord and founder.
Yes, Lord and founder of the Gospel Revolution. But I'm very excited that even though people use my name in vain or don't use it at all, they quote me verbatim, even my life experiences, as to how I learned that. I've had some of the top dudes in Christianity that knew they had to move away from the absolute legalism, but they weren't willing to move far enough away to where it was going to cost them anything.
Mm.
So they picked up the lingo about things that gave people a little more comfort to hang in there a little while longer. This is eventually going to work, but it's running out again. Regretfully, I breathed a little bit of life into the Word Faith movement. I think it would have collapsed without some introduction of some grace along the way, because its tension and its rigidity would have brought it down. I just read an article just yesterday on this church. It used to be called the Worldwide Church of God, but now it's called something, the World Church of Grace. This church was a global, multi-million member body, and the teachings of the gospel of peace and the gospel of grace got into it. And that church, that denomination, no longer exists. And by Herbert W. Armstrong. Anybody my age remembers all the radio shows and the World Tomorrow magazines that got passed out. I mean, these people were troopers with this. And Herbert W. Armstrong and the World Tomorrow. And that entire organization came down under the simplicity of the teachings of the gospel of peace and the gospel of grace. We just got an email from somebody who said that they were in on that, and they watched that process, right, Daniel? Yeah,
they said they listened to one message that you preached in their conference and never went back.
Yeah, and man, and it is true. You may never go back, but you're still going to have 1,000 questions, because it doesn't take a whole lot to break through the rigidity of legalism. All it does take is one fractal, and but you're still going to have to learn. You still got to resolve and sort and file and file and sort and file. And my goodness, what a powerful thing! I had forgotten all about that. The gospel revolution completely annihilated an entire denomination. It is gone. It does not exist on planet Earth. One down, actually two. I know of another one that collapsed under the weight of the, or should I say, the freedom of the gospel. And so two down and 45,998 left to go, right? So,
here we go.
Patience, folks, patience, right?
Let me read this. This is one of the verses that this whole series that we're doing is based on. And this is Paul in Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. For since the creation of the world, and I'm going to read it as we have learned in the Greek, it actually reads, for since the creation of the world, the invisible one is clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. One more verse. Because they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became vain in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, The part that sticks out to me here this morning, Michael, is that in their mind, they became vain. They became fruitless.
Yeah.
Their mind stopped producing. And because of that, because they stopped thinking, they stopped thinking, and that was their downfall. And this is our encouragement to you as we delve into these things that maybe you haven't thought about. Don't become vain in your thinking. Don't become useless in your thinking. Begin to think again. Michael, you shared about the thousands and thousands of people that have heard the gospel and then have moved on. With all due respect to these people, they got their taste of freedom, but it's if they don't continue in that, their mind becomes vain. And I just want to, not as a condemnation to anybody, but a challenge. Let's begin to think again. I had to make this decision, Michael, as we got into this series on the physics, because my mind was vain in that subject. My mind was fruitless in that subject because it was something I didn't think about. But let me tell you here, now that I lost count of where we're at, 4 or 5 sessions so far into this. My mind is fruitful and there is a production that's happening. And what is going on here is the wisdom in this context that Paul is saying is that they turned the creator into the creation. They begin to focus more on the creation and lost sight of the creator. And what we are doing in this is we are putting the focus back on the creator. And we can see that through the beautiful creation that he made. But as we look at it in a fruitful way, what we're seeing is that it all points back to the fact that there is a creator. And when we point back to that, everything that is made reveals the invisible one.
Yeah, coming to the point to where that the creation is what you worship. Let me say this very clearly. Theoretical physics today worships creation.
Forgot theatrical.
Theatrical too, and it becomes quite theatrical. And now, if you don't listen to these guys, you may not know that they have declared there is no creator. Stephen Hawking, the sweet gentleman who spent the majority of his life paralyzed, made the declaration before his death that there is no God. Neil deGrasse Tyson has openly stated, all of the leaders of this have openly stated and mock anybody who thinks that God created the world at all, much less in 6 days. This is ignorance. But this is what happens when you begin to take on the creation separate from a creator. Now, Paul said if you understand creation correctly, it'll prove that God did create it. So when you hear people talking about physics and any respect that you have for physics, theoretical physics, if you're thinking, wow, these guys have worked on this a long time, 100 years. That's how long is. And no more than 100 years total have they been, has it been declared, that's the speed of light. And that's where the crux of this matter begins. And it seems as though that we need to have a respect for this science. That's what we're saying. It is not science. It's a belief system. And even as we had to delineate from Christianity what the gospel is, we're having to delineate what true physics is from the theoretical aspect of it. Because the theoretical physics, I'll just be honest with you, people may speak of needing to have respect for these people, but I have no respect for their conclusions. Now, them as people have great respect. And But they have a whole lot of reason to stick with this, not just science, not just for the purity of science. So this Paul's statement about creation and the creator, you cannot separate the teaching about creation from the creator. If you do, your children are going to be taught that there is no God. And since 1992, you may not know it, but if your kids go to public school, they have been taught there is no creator, and that is science. So now, if you find no problem with that, even after that same group of kids that were taught that there is no creator, that the Big Bang theory is science, they started killing each other in school just 5 years later, and then killing themselves at record numbers beyond anything that's ever existed before. Now, if you're okay with that, then you can say we should just stick to the gospel. I'm not okay with that. Just the same as I'm not okay with the information that I put out there as a, quote, delivered homosexual. I'm not going to, and people have wanted me to not refer back to that ever again. Don Bartlett was one of them. He wanted so much for my life to not be entangled with the difficulty of that profession that he really felt until his dying day that I should never have come out and professed that I was not a delivered homosexual for the sake of promoting the gospel. I can't do that. I know that others can for whatever the reasons are. It's not that their reasons are not noble ones. To be able to get the gospel out, what a noble reason. There's no better reason. But when you have to lie to tell the truth, there's something wrong with that. And for me to say I'm okay, but for me to say that I know that they're teaching our kids since 1992, every child that goes through public school, and I'm a proponent of public schools. I just don't think they should be required to teach something that is theory. But that since they got the term theory changed to science, now it can be implemented that they have to teach it. So if it does not bother you that children are the most disconnected from reality in this last 50 years, they are the most filled with mental illness. They are the ones who are on trying to give everybody instruction about how to live a productive life and being self-help gurus. And 2 years ago, we discovered a 1 year period of time where 10 of the top self-help gurus online to kids of this age group trying to find identity, that they themselves took their own lives. Now, if you can remove the teaching of we came from nothing, we are nothing, we're going to nothing, if you can remove that from the equation of why these children are filled with such despair, then we really should not be addressing this. But if you see that a correlation actually could be more than a correlation, it could be causation, at least in part. And I cannot, even as I had to say that I am not a delivered homosexual. Yeah, I know that. I know it affects my ability to reach Christians. But I still have to tell the truth. And the very same way pertaining to this issue of the Big Bang Theory and children being told that they came from nothing. There is no creator. There is no creator. That's what E = MC² declares. There is no creator.
You know, Michael, we got a letter this week, and I'd like to read that because it's along these lines, and it's from our friend Michael Turi. And he writes, in the most recent podcast, I think Venus was referred to as being further from the sun than the Earth. Uh-oh. We're already starting with the correction.
Yeah.
if we made that declaration, our apologies. That was a slip up. He goes on to say, I also don't agree that there would be no gospel if E equals MC squared was true. Those scientists that have devoted their lives to physics and have run experiments and believe that E equals MC squared is correct really have nothing to gain by believing that. What is their motivation? This message restricts God to the law of physics. I don't think God is bound by the law of physics. Could you give me the physics equation for Jesus Christ as he is resurrected and after his resurrected? I believe the gospel that the gospel revolution has revealed. But the gospel should not be this difficult. When I became a GR several years, they made the gospel simple. I like the way Rob Hines explains the gospel. I like the way the gospel revolution explained the gospel. These are just some of my many thoughts. Thank you. Grace and peace.
We appreciate that. And yes, of course, the lineup of the planets, let me correct myself, is Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Neptune, I replaced Neptune with Venus. You're going to have me making these mistakes all the way through. The mistake of the order of the arrangement does not disqualify the truth of what is being said. Even though I did, I own that. I did that wrong. And I've probably done it wrong in others. Keep me on track here. So Michael wants to know, what is the equation for Jesus Christ dying on the cross? The equation is E equals ML. E equals MC square says Christ did not die on the cross and that it did not accomplish anything, because E equals MC square is the one that leads to the conclusion there is no creator. If there is no creator, there's no new creation. And the physics is that the containment failure of the body of Christ, he was the container of all light, all righteousness. And when his body was crucified, that is what is described as fission. That is physics. And fission breaks open the containment, releases the power that is within. The second phase of what happened at the cross is what they're struggling with now, but it's called fusion. Christ not only let out of him righteousness and light and holiness, but he also took the human race that was inside of him and fused all of it together. Now, that's the physics of the cross. In fact, if you know the physics, it's easier to explain than it is with Bible verses, because people can argue Bible verses all day long. You can't argue with this physics. There seemed to be a statement in there about that these statements by physics have been proven to be true. That's exactly what I heard from Christianity. How dare you disagree with people going to heaven and hell? Hell's been proven. The process that you must make Jesus your personal Lord and Savior. That's in the Bible. And I could go on, as Michael knows, for a long list of things that that I and he and all of us still encounter as people saying that these things are proven truth. We are saying that the conclusion of the speed of light being that there is no creator, that if it is not wrong, the speed of light has not been falsely declared. And I can prove to you it has been falsely declared.
By the experiments that they use.
The very same experiments. All we have to do is look at the experiments and realize the observation of what they said they saw. They did not see what they thought they saw. It's just like being in church and you watch this and you watch that and you say somebody got slain in the spirit. Well, actually what you saw was somebody fall backward into somebody else's arms. That's what but you see, depending on who the observer was, oh man, the Spirit of God came down, knocked them right out, and they fell out on the floor. They were unconscious. Well, now I've gone through the slain in the Spirit thing, and I know that did not happen to me. I was one of the first catchers for Benny Hinn Ministries.
Ooh, that's a big job.
Yeah.
Pick him up.
So, it was before he got so dramatic. Believe me, he was not quite so dramatic. His coat was not used as a weapon. But I met Benny Hinn when I was speaking in the adult group for the Full Gospel Businessmen in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Benny Hinn had been asked to come and speak to the youth group. So I was a featured speaker at this meeting. Benny Hinn didn't even make it onto the roster because he had been asked to come and speak to the youth group. And something began to happen, and the guy who was president over the Toronto group said something's happening in the youth group. We're canceling our meeting. We're all going over there. And that was when I was asked to be one of the catchers in this group. That is also the first place that I injured my back, was from catching these people, because I wasn't used to doing this stuff. So where everybody else got healed, I got broken. So
can someone say it don't work?
It don't work. And all we had was a guy standing there. I never will forget it. I caught this guy. I caught him in my arms, laid him on the floor. And Benny comes up, what happened to you? What happened to you? And he's got on his shoes, and he said, I had my toes cut off when I was that certain age. And he said, my toes just grew back in my shoes. Now, for some reason, nobody even had him take off his shoes. We all just went ape crazy that somebody's toes grew back in their shoes. Even if he had taken them off, how did we know whether or not the toes were ever cut off? Mm-hmm. So you see, people believe what they want to believe. And you might ask, why does Benny Hinn keep doing what he knows does not work? Because of money and because of position. Mm. If you think theoretical physics is not raking in as much money as the church is, you better stop and think again. Tyson or any of the rest of these guys can say anything that disagrees with quantum mechanics, which Einstein did not agree with. Einstein never put his stamp. He said God does not play dice. So Einstein was trying to figure this out with the understanding of God. The guys that have done it now have used it to proclaim openly there is no God. And more specifically, there is no creator. Yet their math says everything happened in an instant. Mm. Now, that's not where it started. It started with the speed of light, but that speed has been adjusted, coerced, and corrected. And but the speed of light stayed the same, even with inflation of the universe happening everywhere all at once. Everything everywhere all at once. Now, that's not a statement they use, but that is the math they present, states that. But they will not say instantaneous, because that means that would be connected to a creation. And then they say, well, but the speed of light within that expansion stayed the same. So somebody tell me how light exists inside of something, and it expands at a quadrillionth of a second to the 60th power, a quadrillionth of a second to the 60th power in even less distance and time combined. How does that happen and the speed of light within it stay the same? It's a collision course on every direction. Now, I understand that when you Google people, I've had people say, well, you've got to be careful about going into AI. Believe me, you're not going to find this. You can research you can ask AI about the speed of light, and all you're going to get is confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to learn about this, you've got to do your own research, because AI will not agree with you about the speed of light. It will not. Go try it. It's not going to happen. But you can take each experiment and ask exactly how that experiment was done. By the time you get through examining the experiment itself and what came out of it, then ChatGPT will say, wow, this is not scientific. That it will tell you.
Mm.
But that's only if you have the fortitude to go into each experiment and question exactly what was happening, how they did it, who did it, what was the motivation, and what did they do trying to find out. That's what I had to do with Christianity, folks. I had to look at this. For someone to say, what motivation would they have except just pure love of physics? That's like asking why the Catholic Church still preaches purgatory.
Mm.
Money. It's still the same. I mean, you can't get it outside of that. It's money. It's fame. These guys are all on stage. They're no different than preachers. And that's what they're doing. They are proving to your children and to mine and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, there's no need in even listening to a gospel revolution, because there is no God. Now, if you can't see the logic of that's why we need to question this. We need to publish this. And we just put up a new website. And by the time that this is out, Daniel, we'll have that where that people can access it. And it's called the lilbornequation.com.
Mm.
Lilbornequation.com.
Mm.
And so that's where the bulk of the science part of this is going. And we're not going to include, we're deliberately stripping it of any spiritual implications, because we're trying to reach the world with the gospel. We're trying to build a bridge for the world to be able to come to the gospel. Instead of the gospel trying to get to them, they will come to the gospel. We have a plan, and it's not a frivolous one. It is all wrapped up in the gospel. And we are not the ones who tied physics to the gospel. Paul did.
Mm. So the question presented here, that is, why is it that E equals MC squared? If that is true, then the gospel is a lie. And really that goes into whether there's a creator or not, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And then if there is no creator, I mean, we've built this ministry on the Hebrew scriptures, and the Hebrew scriptures teaches us that there is a creator.
Mm-hmm.
And if we cannot rely on the very first story in the Hebrew scriptures, then what says that we can rely on any of it? And so as we look at this, as we disprove E equals MC squared, we disprove the idea that everything came into existence by itself without a creator. And we prove the fact that there was a creator. Thus, the scriptorial, the scriptures are true, and the story is real, and the gospel that we preach is true.
Well, it's all about a new creation, right?
Yeah.
If there is no creation, everything about the new creation is a lie. If the creation is not true. And I realize a lot of people seem to want to disconnect what happened at the cross from creation. But the moment you do, you invalidate the new creation instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So by refusing to address physics, that is a point to where that by that decision, I refuse to connect physics to the gospel. It's too complicated or whatever. But physics is as simple as the gospel. What a one downhill. That is as complicated as physics gets. What makes it complicated? Trying to explain why the hell they've said what they've said and why it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The gospel itself, yes, it's simple. And now that you've got it, it's simple. But you must remember the days when you had to walk your way backward out of that.
Mm.
I remember, I've shared this for decades now, that when you get involved in a doctrine and into a deception of anything, you've got to walk out the way you came in. You've got to undo it based on the path you took into it. You can't come out the other side and then just curse the way you got there. You've got to undo this in a way that you can't. Everybody is involved in Christianity on different levels or other religions. We have people that are so nominally, I don't want to mispronounce Neptune, that people are so nominally affected by Christianity, they don't see the importance of the gospel. If you stop just a moment, it's crazy people like Daniel, like Michael, like all of us who were so committed to the cause that this began to crumble. And if we did not have all our questions answered, we would never have come out if we didn't address them one by one. Daniel can take you through his story, and it was one story by one. His started with Robert Bell's book about questioning the very existence of hell.
Mm.
And then from there, he has come to where he's at now. Not only learning the gospel, but learning the physics of the gospel. The gospel has a physics, folks.
Mm.
It is physics. The gospel is not just about physics. It is physics. And by explaining the physics, we are speaking a language that the whole world understands.
Mm.
That's exactly what Psalm says, is that this line, what is a line? A line is physics. This line has gone out into all the earth. He told us there is nothing that is not affected by the heat that is generated from exposure to the sun. The sun's heat touches everything. And then, of course, we get into that in detail as to exactly how that happens. Since you don't feel any heat from the sun after you pass 7 million miles away from the sun, there is no more heat felt from the sun anywhere. But heat is generated where light interacts. The interaction of light, the immediacy of light. If there is no immediacy of light, there is no immediacy of righteousness. And if we sit back and without any determination, folks, the gospel revolution that I've taught and you guys have embraced with whole hearts and it's changed your life, the next generation is not going to be interested because they've been taught there is no creator anyway.
Mm.
I mean, I'm dealing with people right now who are GRs that their very families, one person, one of our very close GRs, has 3 sons that I'm telling you, he is one of the most powerful proponents of the gospel. And he has 3 grown sons that absolutely reject everything that he says because of what they have learned from E = MC squared.
Mm.
Now, you may not deal with that on a daily basis. I do.
Mm.
My heart goes out to a man who knows the gospel, and their disagreement with him is not based on Christianity is right or wrong, or you are right or wrong. It's all irrelevant because E = MC squared says there is no creator.
Mm. one of the questions within this letter, Michael, is also God is not bound, or statements is God is not bound by physics. But I think we have to understand the fact that he's the creator of the physics. Yeah. And if that's the way that he chose to operate within this created world, who are we as the creation to, didn't Paul say something like that? Who are we to say to the potter, why have you made me this way? These are the physics that God has designed. And I think that's the very core of what we're saying, is by understanding the physics, we can see the fingerprints of the creator. And by looking to the physics, we're seeing the realm in which God chose. We didn't choose to put God within these physics. God chose to put himself and us within this realm of physics.
There's nothing about God that does not fit in the realm of physics. There's two things that do not fit into physics. One is light and the other is gravity. And what has happened is that theoretical physics has placed light and gravity into a physics world. Light was spoken. The things God spoke are not things that were made. It says that you can understand God by everything that he made. That's physics. Everything that is made is physics. God didn't make light and he didn't make gravity. He spoke these into existence.
Wow.
And everything is held together by the very presence of the word of his power. That's how it's all held together. That's called gravity and light. But when you start measuring light and measuring gravity, you have taken the very physics of applying that. And I'm really grateful for that statement, because in those two aspects, God is the physics. He is the light. He is the gravity. And you start measuring and saying that he is bound by this. You're right, Michael, that God is not bound to that. But the things that physics has said is that light, they have bent light and gravity to their proportions. And if you sit back and I sit back and we don't measure everything God made can be measured. Everything he made can be measured. Everything he made has physics to it. The two things that escape the boundaries of physics is light and gravity. They could not accept that, so they put a speed on light and they turned gravity into a cloth, a material. They turned time into a space cloth. And time-space fabric is what they call it. And I don't know if it's silk or linen or what. Sorry, I have to make fun of this a little bit, because the problem is people hadn't stopped and thought of how ridiculous this sounds. But the measurement of light and the measurement of gravity is time-space fabric. Time only exists here on Earth. You can read Genesis. Time, there's not a time in space. Well, it affects space-time. There is no such thing as space-time. There is time that we can judge based on, even the things that are in space are based on Earth time. NASA doesn't adjust to space-time when somebody goes into space. That is not what happens. They're still based on when the sun goes up and when the sun goes down. That is time. And that's what Genesis says, that all of the planets are put into place to measure time. To measure time where? On Earth. Because everything that is talked about, every prophecy, is bound by time. It's bound by physics. And if you take time and you make it into something else, you're doing exactly what Christianity did. You're making everything variable. Everything is process. Everything is delay. And light is not process nor delay. Gravity is not process or delay. Everything that God made has process and delay.
Michael, you blew my mind. That was my mind blowing across the room. I think all of this, this was my aha moment, Michael. You just
Really?
gave it to me. This understanding that light and gravity, I'm sure you've said it to me before, but light and gravity are not constrained within these physics, and that is God.
Yes.
My goodness, Michael, that is that's the Lilborn equation has now sunk within my head permanently. That was the thing I needed. And thank you, Michael Turi, for asking and making that statement, because that has put everything in order in my thought. And I just want to curse right now out of excitement. This is good.
Well, and we do appreciate the question, Michael. Now, when you ask questions, we have to answer them according to what you ask about. I can't skirt the answer trying not to ruffle any feathers or anything like that. I assume that if somebody's in the gospel revolution, they want to hear the truth about their questions. They don't want to be placated to, just like I don't. I don't want to be placated to. And I despise it when somebody figures out, they think they know what I want to hear, and they tell me those things. That is the yuckiest feeling. That's what I call the wet wool sweater on a sunny, hot summer. That's uncomfortable. It don't fit. It itches. It's terrible. So what we've done is take these very concerned statements, and we've dealt with them very directly, and we've done our very best. And we appreciate that you have done what I needed to do, and that is correct my statement about where the planets are arranged. Even though I got them out of line, what I was saying was that the one that's furthest away from us, the one that is 50% further from us, is 4 times hotter than us. So that the thermodynamics, as we understand it, especially when they took it and threw it over the universe, does not function the way that it appears. Observation is science. If you can observe it and it's repeatable, then it's scientific. If you cannot observe it and it cannot be repeated, then your observation of that is incorrect. You saw something, just like we gave you the example of being slain in the spirit. It was either somebody got knocked down by God, or somebody was overcome with emotion, went along with the motion of the motion of the moment and the emotion, or God knocked them down. It's not both, but both are observable. One is true, one is not. Observation does not always tell you what the facts are. And we're telling you that from Romer all the way up to Maxwell and those who did these experiments, all of these are going to be posted on the new website. We go into detail and we deconstruct those observations and show why those observations were incorrect and why it does profit people. I mean, it's to think that theoretical physics has nothing but pure motive in mind. It's that the same thing is trying to say that the Baptist Church has nothing but pure motive in mind. That Benny Hinn has nothing but pure motive in mind. That all of these guys have nothing but pure motive in mind when millions of dollars is coming in. It's like saying that, why would you ever question Kenneth Copeland? Surely nothing but pure motive has driven his conclusions. And we know that is not true.
Can I just say that again, that by adding the speed of light to light, you are applying physics to God. You are constraining God
to
our physical realm. Same thing with gravity. That was a new idea to me, that he upholds all things by the word of his power. That's gravity, his word. And getting back to where we started this conversation back in, everything that was spoken was eternal, and everything that was created. Oh my God, that the difference between those, that is of God, that light is of God, the gravity is of God. He upholds all things by the word of his power.
Yeah, it is. It's the ones who are submitting God to physics is not us.
Mm-hmm.
It's the theoretical physics that the theoretical physicists that are forcing God into physics.
Mm-hmm.
They're forcing light into physics. They're forcing gravity into physics. And these are not things God made. These are things God spoke. These things are God.
Wow. Whew, that's good preaching. You mentioned the new creation, Michael, and I want to kind of shift gears here for a few moments and bring up another GR that had reached out to us, one who has been contributing quite a bit lately, and that is Mr. Robert May.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, you shared with me a little bit of the conversation that you and him had about being born again, just like Jesus said. I'm so glad that I've been born again. In John 3:3, Jesus answered and said to him, "Most assuredly I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." One of the things that Robert May brought to our attention was this word "again." Michael, what did you hear from Robert May about this word "again"?
Well, Robert came up with this crazy notion, like he always does. And he said that the word "again" doesn't mean what we have stated it to be. We defined "again" based on John's response.
Nicodemus.
I'm sorry. See there, I just Neptuned Nicodemus.
Well, I was going to edit it out, but now that you corrected it all.
No. We leave the mistakes and all. I just Neptuned Nicodemus. So, we do not claim to say everything precisely. We do everything we can to get the truth of what we're saying to you. I know it would give great credibility if I could just talk, but I can't. All right. So that's one thing I don't know how to. I try to mitigate it, but it's still there, and everybody knows it. So just laugh at me and move on. But so Robert May said that the term "again" doesn't mean a second time in the way that we think. And so I just thought, well, I can get this one real quick. And I pulled it up. And the word "again" means from the beginning.
Mm.
So this is not placing a second birth. It is talking about another birth. But it's not talking about one subsequent after your physical birth. That was Nicodemus' understanding. Only concept Nicodemus had was physics.
Mm-hmm.
His only concept was physics. And he said, okay, I've been born. How do I do that a second time? By crawling into my mother's womb and coming out the second time. Mama say, no, we're not doing that.
I think she might say, hell no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And see, he was trying to place physics on what Christ was saying. What he said was, if you were not in the original beginning of light itself, if you didn't have a birth that preceded this one, you can't even be in the kingdom of God unless you had a previous birth. And I've looked at it every direction I can, and that is exactly what he's talking about. Even the story fits in. So here's where we have had to hold our mystic friends' understanding. We've had to stop and think, they're seeing something here. But we think they are misdefining what they're observing. And because, I, like I said, I know some of these people, and they are the finest people in the world. These are people who are not trying to get rich off of what they're doing, just the same as we aren't. Now, we would like to get rich by any means, but there are some things we ain't going to do. But because we'd be in jail instead of being wealthy. This concept then takes on a different hue when you see that the term again means from the beginning. This is a previous birth that had to take place. Now, Daniel and I first started talking about this immediately after that, and we've sat on this for a little while because we needed to hold both of these things together and let them define themselves. We don't go pursuing answers, folks. I just refuse to do that. If the tension of and when I say tension, I don't mean, there's tension in here, we need to get out of here. Tension in physics. Tension in physics shows you that something needs to be resolved. So you don't stamp out the tension, you allow the tension to remain, and you hold both things that are in tension, and you view them both and let them come up with the answer. We don't go looking for answers anymore. We let answers present themselves, or we have no answers. Every time you come up with an answer on your own, it will be wrong because it's saturated with confirmation bias, the need to be right. I hope that I don't have any of that left, but I'm still human, a gloriously righteous human, but still human. Now, so we saw this, but we've always seen, as Daniel said, he first really embraced and promoted Mirror Bible, but it was because of its conclusions.
Yeah.
Daniel didn't have to erase his history and say, boy, I can't tell anybody I loved Mirror Bible. Man, how stupid do I look? Or what would that mean? So we're not connected to those things. We know that the truth of the matter is more powerful than protecting our own reputation. We don't need to do that. When we're wrong, we're wrong. When I make Mercury the last planet in the solar system, that's a mistake, all right? But it's things that you embrace because we are human and we're not going to do everything or say everything right. We're in the process of learning. We are a research ministry, even though we were mocked for that and said, well, where is that in the scripture? Search the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life. So that's research, folks. We're doing exactly what Christ said to do. And it's probably the only valid ministry on earth is research. So as you look at this, and we saw that Mirror Bible was coming. That's why Francois and his wife came to my house, is because we both had the same conclusions about the righteousness of the entire world. The thing I didn't know when they were visiting, they knew, but I did not know. They knew that I was teaching that this was resolved at the cross. I did not know they were saying that the cross was completely unnecessary for this condition to be true. So since then, I've still tried to extract what is there and hold both things in this tension and let it resolve itself. So Daniel, as far as I can see, we allowed that to happen and this tension has resolved itself.
Mm.
because, and we've kind of led up to it unknowingly by our previous 2 or 3 sessions where we explained the difference between being in Christ before the foundation of the world and Adam then being created as a shadow of this creation.
Mm-hmm.
And that Adam was not righteous. No, Adam was not that light any more than John was that light.
Mm.
We were the light in Christ before Adam ever showed up.
Yeah.
Well, then where the hell does Adam fit into this? Adam had to be redeemed into this.
Mm.
None of it. We would not be what we are. Adam would not be what he is in us. Without us, they would not be made perfect. That's the conclusion. And see, what Mere Bible and our mystic friends are trying to say is that that in spite of them, everybody was always perfect. But that's not what Hebrews says. It says that unless we had come to this fullness point, that they would never have experienced the perfection that we do. But they experienced this perfection at the same time the rest of the human race did. And that is at the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ.
Mm.
And that is the power of fission and fusion all at once. So Adam was never, ever, ever righteous. Adam nor his descendants were ever righteous. Abraham was never righteous. He had believed the Christ, because if you read what Adam said, and this is what I learned from Robert May also, is that what Abraham believed was the gospel, because he's talking about Christ. And the word that was taken out 7,000 times from the Hebrew scriptures. Our last week program should have made that abundantly clear. And the fact that, Daniel, I was just looking at this and I found that there are 50 of the Psalms that start out as addressed to the musician. Now we have, gosh, how many? There's 160, 50 something Psalms. I don't know. There's a lot, but there's 50 of them that are addressed to the musician. Now, it's not just any musician. You can look it up yourself. It's talking about Lucifer. It's talking about the one who was in charge of worship in heaven. So what you find in 50, and these 50 very revealingly talk about the utter destruction of evil, the utter destruction of how that light is going to, the darkness can't stay around where light is. There's 50 of these. All you have to do is type in musician and go to Psalms, and you can read every one of them. And this is Christ speaking in these Psalms. And David is not the musician, because David is the writer. So David's not writing to David. And then he's quoting Christ, which is the word that is in there every time. And this is Christ explaining to Lucifer, who is at this point bound in chains. He is bound during the 1,000-year reign. He is bound. And this is Christ letting him know, your time of just being bound is going to end, and you're coming to a cataclysmic end.
Mm.
I always wondered why it sounded like Lucifer and Jesus kind of knew each other when he was tempted in the wilderness, right? They don't seem like they're encountering people they've never encountered before. It's just like a continued casual conversation, right?
Right.
Think about it. It's not like, whoa, looks, oh, you're the Christ. And Christ didn't say, oh, whoa, here, my God, this is Lucifer himself. That is not expressed there. And because this was a continued conversation. from Psalms from hundreds of years prior, up to 1,000 years prior, this conversation began. The conversation ended when Lucifer finished his temptation of Christ, and it says he departed from him for a season.
Mm.
That's the end of 50 conversations that Christ had with Lucifer, recorded in Psalms. You want to know what Christ said to Lucifer? Go read all those Psalms. It is so profound. We don't even have time. We don't even have time to get to it. But we can give you this. You can go study it and look and see for sure that the musician is not talking about David. It's talking about the heavenly musician. There's only one heavenly musician mentioned in the scriptures, and that is Lucifer himself. So how did we get from Robert May to Lucifer? So anyway, this is where that Robert May introduced this to me, and it really is quite profound. So Daniel, how does that resolve in you? After we had a couple of conversations about it, we did not want to conflate Adam with what we were in Christ before the foundation of the world, because that is what mysticism has done. They have conflated Adam. They've conflated the sixth day creation with the first day creation.
Yeah, one of the things that stands out in my memory is the recent series we did on the Arrhenius versus Epiranius, that is the heaven versus the heavenly, and understanding that Jesus was the only one who referred to Jesus or to God as the heaven Father,
right?
And when in reference to anyone else, it was the heavenly Father. So there was this difference between heaven and heavenly. Now let's bring that into this discussion here in John chapter 3, that you must be born again. Jesus goes on in verse 5 and says, "Most assuredly I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." And then later on in verse 13, he says, "No one has ascended to heaven, but the one who has come down from heaven, that is the Son of Man who is in heaven." So we have this heaven versus heavenly discussion brought up here again. And Michael, the word that you taught us here a few weeks ago was ontology. What is the ontology of humanity? Jesus was the one, and he's talking about himself here. He said, and we've had others, many others who have taught about this, and that was the point is, Jesus isn't talking to everyone and saying, be born again, be born again, be born again. He's talking about one.
Yes,
he says, the only one who has been born of the Spirit and of water was me. So at this context, at this point in human history, the only one who meets this criteria is the one who is heaven.
Yes.
And that is Christ. And so he was born of flesh, he was born of the water, and he was born of the Spirit. And he was born again. And that word again being from above, from the beginning. Michael, as you're talking to, the other thing that comes back to mind is the 1,000-year reign of Christ. We know Christ was here and active and moving even before he became flesh. And so you have this intersection of all of this, everything that's happened in heaven. Now, where does the transition take place? It transitions into the fact that all of these people who were here between Adam and Christ, they were not born of the Spirit. And if you read the context here of chapter 3, he tells them you got to believe. And then later tells them that you couldn't believe. Why? Because you were in darkness. He also says here in verse 19 of chapter 3, and this is the condemnation, that the light, that's the one whose ontology comes from heaven, the one who's been born from above,
Yes.
the one who was born from the beginning. He's the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. The light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. For everyone practicing evil hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. But he who does the truth comes to the light, that the deeds may be clearly seen that they have been done in God. So this light, this is the condemnation that Jesus, the one whose ontology is from heaven, the one who was born from the beginning, he shone, but he shone in darkness. See,
Yeah.
John, 2 chapters before this, said, I am not the light, but I come to tell you that the light is coming. I've come to speak of the one who is here, that the light is shining. He was standing in darkness and still overshadowed by the Christ because he had that anointing upon him. That's the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Only through that reign of Christ, with his influence over John, could he see that this light was here. He was the one in the wilderness calling forth. He was the one who was playing a part of this. But what was it all pointing to? It was all pointed to this time when everyone would be born of the Spirit and of water. When did that happen? That happened when when heaven came to earth and became the heavenly. This overshadowing, this conciliation of heaven and earth, this conciliation of not only Christ and the new creation, but the bringing in of Adam, the bringing in of Moses, the bringing in of Abraham, the perfecting, the redeeming of all of these, bringing it in. Yes, it was a reality in heaven, but when that became a reality on earth was when heaven came to earth, when Christ came to earth and made that a reality. Beautiful. Unless you're born from above, unless your ontology is from the beginning, you will not see the kingdom. And though the kingdom of God was shining right in front of their face in the person of Jesus, they couldn't see it. They couldn't believe it. How many? 99 times the book of John says to believe, and yet he concludes that argument with nobody believed. Nobody believed. And what a beautiful place to put this story in the midst of believing. See, they couldn't be persuaded of the heaven. They couldn't be persuaded of the heavenly yet. Why? Because they were blinded by darkness, even though the light was shining within them. Michael, could we say that they did not have an electromagnetic field to interact with the light?
One could say that, yes. There was no ability to comprehend. And that's what that verse in itself, Daniel, comes alive. And when you understand electromagnetics, that light shining and darkness being there doesn't change anything unless there's something in the darkness for the light to encounter. So the light shined into the darkness, and the darkness have no comprehension. There wasn't an interaction with anything that it was in the darkness, because all it was darkness. Now, you get any type of a magnetic field inside of that, and the light is going to interact with it. It is one of the strangest things. There's many strange things about light. It's very strange that the light that is inside of the sun, we're not going to go in this great detail, but here's a couple of little facts that are just so powerful. The light that is in the sun is not what you're seeing. It is not transporting from the sun to here. It's dark between here and there, folks. It's dark. So light has to become what we use the word omnipresent, but it's only there when it interacts with something. So until it encounters our electromagnetic field, there's no comprehension of light. It's all darkness. The light shines, but the darkness comprehends it not until it encounters an electromagnetic field. And then light has that magical interaction, or a very profound interaction. And so the light is not shining on you from the sun. The light is shining on you based on the electromagnetic field that you're in on Earth. and the electromagnetic field that every mass has. All mass has electromagnetic field. That's why things show up in the light. So, amazing fact, light is at the sun and it's here, but it's completely dark between here and there.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is the heat of the sun. Man, how many times have we stepped out and you put your hand up and say, oh my God, the heat from the sun today. Well, that heat you're experiencing, the heat of the sun only goes out 7 million miles. And Mercury is 26 million miles from the nearest radiant heat. We're way far away from that radiant heat. Then why do we get heat? We get heat because light interacts with an electromagnetic field. That interaction creates heat. And that heat is determined by angle of interaction with electromagnetic field and duration of time. When we tilt away from the sun, we just don't have the time to heat up for it to get warm and stay warm. And also the angle of the sun changes in its interaction with our electromagnetic field. So two things that are at the sun, light and heat, but they do not exist between here and there. But they exist here as light and heat, and they exist there as light and heat. There is none of that between here and there because there is no electromagnetic field strong enough for the light to interact with. So it's darkness. So that is how we can say that light does not travel unless you add to your argument that all electromagnetic fields are light. So they saw that they were wrong because of some of the things we've pointed out. So they turned light into they call it invisible light. Non-visible light is traveling through that void of space. Non-visible light, it becomes visible. What makes it visible? So there's a lot of double talk about it. And even the speed of light is said to be 30 million miles per second. And yet that is not functional for interaction between mass and energy. So that has to be squared, but it's only squared on paper. And what that means is that the speed of light can't be true. If you can square it on paper, then what was existing before is not real. It's only on paper. So if you can square something on paper and you have no mechanism by which it is squared other than on paper, I mean, think about it, folks. Please stop and think. C squared is taking light from 300 million miles per second and placing it at 90 quadrillion meters per second. And that's just for functionality between force and mass. Who accelerated it? What mechanism accelerated it? You can take a bullet from zero speed and you can shoot it. You can lift a rocket off and accelerate. There's acceleration, but see, none of these laws fit light. Light does not fit these laws. That's why they have to change it up, switch it up, even for creation. So then they took the speed of light squared, and they squared that by the 60th power. Only on paper. Because they cannot explain creation at such slow speeds. So they had to create mass, a word that's sensible in our brains. But believe me, the word inflation does not fit the number, which is instantaneous. And we went through all of that. But you'll hear a lot of these little things repeated. I'm really kind of glad that I goofed up and got the planets out of order, because folks, that draws your attention. And if that helps you to be critical, and I don't mean critical in a negative term, if that helps you be critical of what we're saying, so be it. Let's make more mistakes. Because only when the questions are asked, and if it takes making a major flub like that to get the questions to come in freely, I make a fool out of myself every day to be able to entertain an honest question like we got from Michael.
My. A gospel revolution is truly happening amongst us.
It really is.
And so it is. We must leave you, family and friends. If you'd like to know anything about the gospel revolution, and Michael, it's the pledge drive. So make sure you call Michael on
832-318-9339.
and speak to us about how you want to participate in this summer pledge drive. Or you can go to www.gospelrevolution.com and hit the donate button. You can find us on your favorite social media network, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to hit that subscribe, share, and like button on whatever platform you are listening. Now it's good night from Daniel Rouse in Now I Understand Why It's the Frozen Tundra.
And it's good night from Michael Williams, and I have no clue why this is the Queen City. But no, they didn't name it that right after I moved here. I just want that to be made known. It was the Queen City before I got here. So we are very grateful. We're very grateful for the questions that are coming in, the comments. I'm grateful that I flubbed up because it gave us the opportunity to invoke some questions, and maybe we'd still got the good questions even without me flubbing up, but to whatever degree it invoked the question or the freedom to make the statements and the questions, we are glad. Please point out where that these are the types of questions that we need. We need them to be bold. We need them to be upfront, because folks, this is either right or wrong. I don't have a quote dog in the fight. The only dog I have in the fight is that I cannot sit by thinking or knowing that I have an understanding that if we correct this, we could stop this generation from taking each other's lives and destroying their own.
And that is why you should participate in our pledge drive, because we are confident that we are going to change the world. So once again, take part in this. Help us get this message throughout the world. We have more work than we can do. We have more tasks ahead of us than we can handle. And so we need your help. We need your financial support so that we can keep this baby moving and get this Lilborn equation out there. And that's going to be the attraction to the gospel. So again, call Michael at
832-318-9339.
Or go to www.gospelrevolution.com and hit the donate button. And on behalf of all of us at the Gospel Revolution and those from future generations, even in the year 3050, we want to thank you for your contributions, because what we're doing here today is going to help them 1,000 years down the road.
Check out the Lilborn equation. It is up and running. Yes, lilbornequation.com. And if you don't know how to spell my middle name, just look on any document. It's there.
We sure hope you enjoyed today's Powercast. And remember, we'll be here to do the same thing all over again next week, only
better.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the wild love's been knocking from within. You are the love you seek, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy. When you feel lost and alone, staring at the unknown, and these words be the cause that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are. you gotta be nothing to complete. It's not a thing that you need, you're the love. Just remember to breathe and take a second off. Look, I'm just trying to remind you that you're perfectly divine, flawlessly designed. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, let these words be the compass that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are one. We are love.
Deconstructing religion and barbecuing the sacred cows of Christianity before your very eyes. You are listening to
The Gospel Revolution.